right, let's take a look at our next argument and decide whether or not it is valid. Okay, so premise, if I had a chainsaw, I would cut down the tree. Another premise, I cut down the tree. And so the conclusion, therefore, I had a chainsaw. Okay, so first, identify the simple statements and assign variables. So let's start with statement P. So that would be the part that I have a chainsaw. And again, if you want to say I had, that's all right. The tense of the verbs doesn't make any difference. Then there's another simple statement hidden in there, which is I cut down the tree. And those are the only two simple statements that we have. So now we're going to go ahead and write out that same argument using symbols. So if I had a chainsaw, so that would be P, I'd cut down the tree. So again, there's that implied then. So like if I had a chainsaw, then I'd cut down the tree. So P, if P, then Q. I cut down the tree. So that's Q. And the conclusion is, therefore, I had a chainsaw. Okay, so now to take that, instead of writing it vertically, we're going to go ahead and write it horizontally with the and in between. So our first premise is if P, then Q, and our second premise, which is Q, and then that implies our conclusion, P. All right, so now we're going to go to our truth table, and hopefully you're starting to get a pretty good feel for how this works. So first thing, let's go ahead and start with the parentheses. So if P, then Q. And we need to use the P and Q columns. Okay, and again, I feel like I've said this several times, but it never hurts to repeat it. The only time you're going to get a false for if P, then Q is if P is true and Q is false. And so we do have one of those. But the rest will all give us a true value there. So we'll get rid of my highlighting again to make things a little less cluttered. Okay, the next thing, we don't have any knots, we don't have any other symbols, so the next thing we're going to take care of then is that and. We're going to go ahead and do the whole left side. So if P, then Q, and Q. So if P, then Q is this column right here, and our Q. And remember, for an and to be true, both of the two things you're comparing have to be true. So both of them are true in the first column, or first row, sorry, and in the third row. So we've got two trues. The others will be false because there's at least one false statement. And then finally, getting rid of that. Last but not least, we'll take the entire left side, if P, then Q, and Q. Does that imply P? And so we're going to be looking at the column we just did with the P column. And remember, now we're working right to left. Okay, so the if part in our columns here is on the right. All right, so does true imply true? Yes, it does. Does false imply true? Yes, it does. Does true imply false? No, it does not. Does false imply false? Yes, it does. Okay, so this is the first time we've seen here that we have this, oops, I didn't mean to erase that. I meant to highlight that. This is the first time we've seen that we don't have a tautology. We don't have trues all the way down. Okay, that makes this argument an invalid argument. Before you go on to the next video, I would encourage you to go ahead and try to set up as much of the next example as you can, and then check and see how it is you're understanding and making progress.